Hi, everybody. My name is Oliver Leatham. I'm based here in the UK, and I'm a vice president for Certara. One of the things we focus on here in Certara is opportunities for accelerated access to new medicines. It's a key theme in our business, but I think also never before have we needed this more, considering COVID-19 last year and the accelerated launch of the vaccines, which we were fortunate to work on. Some of the key never before really in rare diseases, gene therapy and curative therapies, have we seen so many new, novel, exciting products come into market. And we've had to find new novel ways to help navigate complex HTA systems, and learn from examples of best practice, what other people have done well, to be able to help understand better how to do this in the real world. But first of all, I think companies really aren't necessarily set up to do this traditionally. We often do things in several different ways. We have our clinical part of our organization. Sometimes HTA parts of the organization are separate to health economics and market access, and we really need to think about new ways of demonstrating value post-launch and thinking about this earlier and earlier in the product development cycle. By doing this, we benefit both health systems, manufacturers, and patients. So it's really a win-win-win. And there's different ways to do this. We can tie this to performance. We can introduce things like financial caps to limit the overall spend to the health system, and we can look at other things such as value by indication. So currently, as well as manufacturers, health systems are not really set up to deal with the high price of novel drugs, potentially high upfront costs of advanced therapy, medicinal products, ATMPs, for example, with high manufacturing costs and low patient numbers, are starting to demand higher product prices, and of course we need to ensure we get a fair return on investment. But health systems with annual budgets aren't really set up to manage this, so we need to work well with and engage early with health systems and regulatory agencies and payers to help them manage their budgets better, and possibly even help reshape the commissioning system itself. So what are some of the challenges for payers? I always think of payers like the finance director in my business. So I hope he's not listening. Their job is to say no to most things that we ask of them, and our job is to convince them to say yes. Of course, they need to manage their budgets and ensure that money is spent effectively and efficiently on the things that gain the most value. But our job is to try to convince them that the products that we have are the highest value products and are going to help change people's quality of life, but also in doing so, reduce the strain on their budgets. But there's several levels of uncertainty that we have to help them deal with. For example, for novel therapies, we're often bringing things to market with surrogate endpoints or a lack of comparative efficacy because sometimes there's nothing to compare to. Product demand for new medicines is often higher than anticipated, so they may launch in a priori patient subpopulation. But then when we try to expand this to other patient groups, some of this is often done off license, and that's a fear for payers that would expand access too much too soon and bust the budgets. Cost density also doesn't fit with budgets. As I mentioned, that payers often work on an annual budget system, and what often happens when a new product comes to market is there's a huge demand for this product in the first year or the first few years, and that's often where the price is higher. So we have to also help manage access and spread the costs in some ways. And cost effectiveness at launch often can't be demonstrated. Again, sometimes there's nothing to compare it to, or the data just isn't strong enough. So these are all easy pushbacks from payers that we have to help circumnavigate, and we have to help to be able to demonstrate some of this value earlier and earlier on in the process. So before we learn from some good examples of where things have gone well, let's look at some examples of where things haven't necessarily worked so well in the past. I don't know if everybody's aware of the example of Glybera. This was this product that gained EMA approval and HTA approval for lipoprotein lipase deficiency, an ultra orphan indication with very few products. The product was launched with an over 1 million euros price tag per patient. But it had limited data at launch, surrogate endpoints. It didn't really, I think, demonstrate full value beyond the HTA to the payers. And over 5 years, there was only one patient who was actually prescribed this drug, and eventually the product had to be pulled. So was there something that the company could have done differently in terms of demonstrating this value earlier, in terms of working more closely with health systems to get the product to more patients and being able to gain the right type of data that would reassure payers that this was a good bet? Another example was Repatha in hypercholesterolemia. This gained regulatory approval on a clinical trial, again on a surrogate endpoint for reducing LDL-C levels, low density lipoprotein levels of cholesterol in the body. The data was sufficient for HTA approval, but the payer said, so what? What does this actually mean to us? Why would we reimburse this? What are you going to do in the real world? What about reduction in MIs, strokes, and hospitalizations due to cardiovascular events? So the company went back and it looked retrospectively at this data, and it was able to realize that it did actually reduce MI, stroke, and cardiovascular events. And the company also did two things. One is they guaranteed the collection of this data, and two, they put a risk share agreement around this, saying if they were unable to collect this data, they would not charge the health systems for it. But they lost a lot of time in market in doing so.